always knew what's about to happen to you. You'd leave now.
Some consider these traits to be toxic, such as undesirable in the men of today. We consider these traits such as these not only to be desirable, but to be appreciated and celebrated. Welcome to the Toxic Male Appreciation Show, hosted by and La Reina Creole. Welcome to the safe space for the toxic male.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to my Twitch channel. I, of course, am the Reina Creole, and with me is my lovely and amazing co-host of Positive Fandom. How are you doing, my dear?
I am doing well. How are you, Lorena?
I am doing great, doing wonderful, and so excited to be talking about who we're going to be talking about today. And it's funny, it wasn't something that I had actually like on the schedule to do until I happened to look at my viewing schedule, and what should show up but that Cobra Kai season 5 starts. All the episodes, I call it the mother load, is going to wind up dropping tomorrow, which for us is going to be September 9th. By the time you guys see this show, where they're on YouTube, it will have been out for a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
So have you watched Cobra Kai?
I have watched Cobra Kai, and we were talking a few minutes ago about I kind of got a late start to it as well. My cousin, Franklin, was a huge fan of The Karate Kid and Cobra Kai, and I don't know, like maybe for the past 5 years, he's like, "You got to watch Cobra Kai," and I'm like, "I've seen Cobra Kai, just like what you said. I've seen Cobra Kai. I've seen those movies.
I've seen The Karate Kid. Why do I need? I know what happens. I saw what I needed to watch, which was Karate Kid 1 and 2.
Mhm.
Didn't want to see the third one. Have zero desire to see the third one, at all. And why do I need to watch a TV show? I already know what happened. We know what happened, right?
Only to find out that it was one of the most successful, as far as I'm concerned, reboots I've ever seen. How do you feel about it, Lorena?
I 100% agree. Like we were discussing backstage earlier, I was like, why are people talking about Cobra Kai? I've seen Karate Kid. I'm not really interested in it. And on top of that, you had to pay extra to watch it on, YouTube Red. So I'm like, I don't want to flip and do that. So eventually I got this free trial for like a month. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll watch this on YouTube's dime and see if this is actually worth my time. Starting with the first episode.
Yeah.
I could not believe what I was watching, because people had told me, guess what? And that brings us actually to who we're going to be checking out today, of course, which is going to be William Zabka. And I probably am saying the last name wrong. So y'all have to forgive me for that. But they're just like, yeah, you should watch it. I'm like, why? They said, because Johnny's the good guy. I said, excuse me? They're like, no. They completely switched. Daniel is now the a-hole, and Johnny is no longer an a-hole. I mean, he still kind of is one, but you like him now. And I'm just like, you mean to tell me they wrote this show so well to make you buy into that? They're like, yeah, check it out. So I'm watching it. I wasn't convinced for the first one. I'm like, okay, I see kind of what's going on, maybe. But after that, I was completely hooked. And all I did was binge season 1, binge. That season two, ender broke me. Oh my gosh. I think I was crying on Twitter. I think I was crying on Twitter, and I was so freaking miserable that the the guy who produced the show wanted to follow me on Twitter, probably because he saw just how broken up I was. And I can't believe I'm blanking on his name right now. It's driving me nuts. I'll have to put it in post along the bottom. But yeah, I could not believe they managed to not only switch those roles, but reboot a franchise in a way that if you've never watched The Karate Kid, you could see what was going on. And if you weren't one of those 80s kids or whatever, if you were young kids, there were kids in the show that you could identify with because they had like these young kids learning about, I want to say life in the 80s because Johnny's like, what crap music are you listening to? So there's something literally, it's like honoring the previous lore and handing it off to the next generation, but the roots are there. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And, one of the things, first of all, it's clear that whoever rebooted the franchise cares about the original material. As you said, they value it and they see the importance of making it a success. Mainly, I guess, because they've been seeing what has been happening. If you don't value that original material, you end up with something that doesn't really retain the value at all. And I'm sure they didn't want to do that. So, by respecting the original material, certainly it shows that that was something that needs to be done. Something else they got lucky with, though, Lorena, and of course, for new people to the franchise, they don't know this, but you and I know this because we saw the original, is that so many of the cast members not only are still alive, but they're willing to do the show.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's also part of it, to bringing back the original cast members and not just bringing them back just to kind of say, hey, we did it, but bringing them back with a purpose. And Hayden Schlossberg, that's what I want to say. I'm so sorry, Hayden, I forgot your name. Hayden Schlossberg, he's the co-creator of Cobra Kai, and this article from Screen Rant, which I'm probably going to drop in the description box, it's wonderful how he talks about how you reboot a classic franchise. Because going back to what you were saying about bringing in the original characters, like you have Johnny, and then eventually he runs into Kreese. Kreese is not the same. He's that same guy, but he's not that same, that same guy. Same thing with Terry Silver.
Yes.
He's not who he was, when you saw him even Chosen. That really threw me off. That really threw me off about Chosen. I'm like, is he still salty after all these years? And you see Chosen, and he's changed. There's something that happens to the characters. They're not brought in as just a vanity project, just to bring them in. They have a reason for being there. And it's one of the great things about this franchise that was rebooted when people probably didn't think, and the reboots really haven't gone too well. Not only has this reboot gone well, but it's like gold every season. Like, I've got some seasons I don't like as much because they're all good, but now you're kind of like, picky, like, well, this wasn't as good as, season one. It's not, it's like picking from your favorites instead of picking from, whatever. It's kind of like how I call it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And there's I think it's interesting because, Lorraine, you remember at this time how popular martial arts was. I mean, it still is popular, but in the 80s, oh my goodness, martial arts was incredibly popular. Kids were taking classes like crazy. This was a big deal. The films were a big deal too, but I think maybe it was because of that health kick, like with Olivia Newton-John, Let's Get Physical situation, where people were doing activities like this, and kids were, all you saw were kids like going to these classes with their parents, wearing the gi, right? Like,
Yeah.
and no shoes, or whatever they were supposed to wear, right, to go in. And then of course when they get home, they just like beat up their siblings,
Yeah.
when it just continued with, just these activities that I wonder even now if the popularity has waned a bit, but I don't think so. I think people are still incredibly active in it, but in the 80s, it was almost, one of the top 5 choices for kids to be involved in something like this. So there's very few people out there who aren't touched somehow by some kind of martial arts dojo, whether it's judo, whatever particular martial arts you choose, Lorena.
Absolutely. Martial arts was as popular an after school activity as like football, baseball, dance class. You usually took multiple ones. So it wasn't unheard of to say, out of these extracurricular activities that I do, one of them is martial arts. Because another thing also to remember about, about the 80s, not many people had, cable television. So you kind of had to rely on public television, we'll say like Fox or whatever, to run movies like in the on the weekends. You would see a lot of martial arts movies, and then a lot of those martial arts movies started showing up, in the theaters. But yeah, martial arts was absolutely huge, huge in the 80s, which is which is why the Karate Kid, number one, was such a pop culture pop culture phenomenon at the at the same time. And of course, in the Karate Kid, of course, you had Ralph Macchio as as Daniel, but
Yes.
you also had William as Johnny. So we all know in the original Karate Kid movie, Daniel wound up beating Johnny.
Yes.
So yeah, so it's kind of like, how are you gonna reboot a franchise? And in the first episode, if I recall this correctly, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, the first episode of Cobra Kai, with Johnny, it's like down and out in the valley, because that's a part of the valley that I'm actually familiar with. It's the part of the valley that you kind of ended up there. You didn't really actively try to go to this particular part of the valley if you didn't have, not that it was a sincere, like a super bad area or anything like that. It's just you just didn't, and for him to go from, because he lived in this gorgeous, gorgeous like house. I want to say, I think it was like in Beverly Hills or something like that. And then you see him, and he's got like half a six pack that's like open, and he's like frying bologna for breakfast. And it's just like, bruh, what happened to you?
Well, what's interesting about this is that if I remember correctly, in the second film, Karate Kid, let's say part 2, and it may not be part 2, so whoever is watching this, please forgive me if it's not part 2. There's some point where there's an altercation between Johnny and his I guess trainer. I can't remember what he's called right now, but starts beating him up for losing, or maybe it was part 1, Lorena. And
Part 1.
and I'll never forget how Mr. Miyagi kind of intervened, or somebody intervened on his behalf. And I thought to myself, this is the key, because we can clearly see that that's what any parent would do. Your coach would do this. They would intervene. In the 80s, they would have intervened. They would have said, we're not going to allow this kid to get beat up. We won't allow fighting of parents or anyone else.
Right.
out here. Remember, that was like a thing that would just, you'd get kicked out. No one would want to have anything to do with you anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
I think what was interesting about it is, as you said, he seems like he's the bad guy, or let's say but he really was just kind of defending his turf, at least the way I looked at it, because Elizabeth Shue was his girlfriend.
Yes.
So he lost his girlfriend to Danny, and so he's still very resentful about that. And they capitalize on that in the reboot. So I think that whatever the story was that it was built on, which was a solid story, and probably the story of maybe like the average American kid anyway, they were able to build on that. They needed it in order for this to continue on as a series. So while Johnny grew up in posh luxury, now he's in the same apartment complex or somewhere near there where
he's in Reseda. Yep.
It's in Reseda. And, essentially, he's there. And what's odd about it is we kind of find out the truth, maybe for the first time, even more about Johnny's character, is that he didn't have necessarily a happy childhood and was kind of maybe even abused a little bit. And he is so kind of terrified, I guess, of his childhood and his family that he stays away from them. So, I think that that's very interesting concept, because that's not something you could discuss in the 80s. You couldn't discuss that topic really, but now that he's an adult, the question is, why is he living so down and out? And, when you learn that, you're like, okay, so, it is interesting, because in the 80s, you couldn't just kind of run away. Like, you could go to somebody and say something was happening, but perhaps it wouldn't be investigated. It was very different time back then. And so they stayed true to that. They didn't disrupt it or kind of like try to change it around. They just were truthful about it. And that adds to the authenticity of how, and why Johnny is where he is.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And William Zabka is such a good actor.
So good.
He sold it and I bought it immediately. Like, this dude is just washed up, pissed off about what's happened to him, in his life. And you see the flashbacks from the tournament and all of that.
Yes.
And the arguments that he's had, with his stepdad. And you find out, that his mom married this rich guy, just to quote unquote give them a better life, but the guy was just treated him pretty much like trash. So you see him, he just plays just this disgruntled, dude who's just freaking fed up with life. He's driving around, you see him look up at the billboard, and there's Daniel Valley Lexus dealer, LaRusso Murders. It's just like, how the frick did this happen? And just the way that he's able to, emote that in his acting, to we're kind of disgusted in a way too. Like, the hell?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because we do get a sense of the level of support that Danny has, even though it's just he and his mother, let's say at the beginning of the story. At the very beginning of the story, it's just he and his mother. They're sort of like in a station wagon, and they're relocating to California. And this is supposed to be a new and better place. And things seem very dour and sad. But by the end of the film, we don't have that impression of Danny's future. We don't have that. It's more of well, if he can win this tournament, he can do anything. And I think that was quite an inspiring message in a sense. And the types of films that we got in the 80s for situations like that, where, you can do anything and be anything you want to be. And so, that is also still incorporated into the story, because Danny essentially has obtained the American dream, if you will. And that was important to see, that he could do that he was capable of that. And I mean, and although it doesn't seem like it, Danny does have a lot to prove. He doesn't want to be known as, this kid in the situation that he was in. So the kid from the wrong side of town, so to speak. He doesn't want to be known as that. And so it's not that I'm not saying that he's ashamed of where he came from, but he did want to show that he could do more with his life. And so in order to do that, he had to make this a reality. And he did. So, and it splashed all over town.
Totally. totally all over town. There's the huge, billboard, biggest Lexus dealer, in the
turn on the
valley,
radio,
you
picks up a
know.
pen. It's like, Della Russo dealership. He's
Yeah.
everything this poor guy, Johnny, is incorporating his life. But it is a great plot usage because it tells you that their lives are going to be forever intertwined. And I really like that. Why not reach out to somebody who's a frenemy, because they're frenemies. Um, and they incorporate love into the story. And Lorena, I love a love story.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And we
They
see
do.
love in all the generations in this. We see the kids are in love. We see the parents are in love. We see unrequited love. We see, it just really, it's amazing. Elizabeth Shue is like, I got both of them. Like this chick is just like high school all over again.
All over again with new rules, and kind of like, what do you mean you can't do X, Y, X, Y,
That's
and
right.
Z?
I'm not divorced yet, and all these sort of cool adult issues. It's like, oh, you're only separated, like I'm like, whoever wrote this has lived this. This is it's pure gold, Lorena. It is pure gold.
Oh, it so is. And William is my favorite character. I mean, my favorite actor, on the show. But like a little bit of information about him, like he was born in New York City, and of course we know him from The Karate Kid. I have not seen the Hot Tub Time Machine, and I really feel like I'm missing out because people keep telling me I need to watch the Hot Tub Time Machine.
We got to do a watch party on that one.
On Hot Tub Time Machine. Okay, because
I haven't seen it.
So many people have told me about that. I'm like, really? I'm like, okay, all right. I'll watch it. I'll watch Hot Tub Time Machine.
It sounds like a college beer movie,
like Van Wilder.
Yeah, doesn't it? Like Hot Tub, and then the Time Machine, and then let's get a keg. And
it just sounds funny.
Yeah,
I've just heard so many hilarious things about it. So, yet again, another movie I got to go back and watch. But I did see Back to School. That's one of my favorites because it has a very young Robert Downey Jr. in there.
Oh, yes, that's right. That's right. Of course, Rodney Dangerfield, classic comedian in it. It's got really so many great parts. Sally Kellerman is in it. And that's a classic. People try to capture this back to school feeling. And, I think the man, the gentleman you were talking about has captured the feeling of Cobra Kai.
Yeah, Hayden Schlossberg. Yeah, absolutely. It's just like you feel, I don't know, it's just like, it seems familiar. And yet, there's just more stuff in there. It's kind of like what happens if, you have people where the 80s never ended for them, like they're stuck in the 80s, like Johnny going into the pawn shop with a laptop. It's like, freaking thing doesn't work. Guy's like, of course it worked when I sold it to you. Yeah, see, I can't even turn it on. It's like, did you plug it in to charge up the battery? What?
Yeah, he's like a boomer.
Total freaking boomer. Total boomer. And it's hilarious because he's just like, yeah, okay, right, fine, yeah, all right, cool. Tries to save face, but he's just like, yeah, I really don't freaking know. I don't know what I'm doing, because he couldn't put together the website, so Miguel had to do it for him. Miguel puts his site up. He's just like, yeah, isn't this cool? Making for the dojo. He's like, yeah, and I'm listening to rap. I really dig his music. And just his face, just his face, just with what William can emote with that. I love his scenes with, I think it's Zoto Martorena, I believe.
Yes.
They have great chemistry together. I love seeing their scenes together.
Oh my God. And honestly, they actually had one scene that I really liked, and I kind of had joked about it. And of course, it's like his fantasy dream of being with her, he has a dream where he's actually physically with her, so to speak. They have an intimate moment.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad they put that in there because it's realistic. I mean, this does happen. It's like I have dreams like that. So I think it's important to show that in a context that people can understand. She's a beautiful, wonderful woman. Of course he's attracted to her. This type of involvement and interaction is so important in progressing this story. So people are building relationships with one another, because it doesn't mean anything if you can't, if there's nothing to strive for. And Lorena, this man is 50 something years old, 55.
Yeah, he is 55.
Mhm.
I'm just like, no, I did not believe he was 55. I thought maybe he was in his like mid 40s or something like that.
Oh my God. He is
I
fit,
can't
he is
believe
hot. He is, oh my God. This guy is, oh my goodness. I'm sorry.
he looks a girl. No, he looks so good. And I think that's also part of what sells it, as
Yeah.
well. It's like he's still good looking. I mean, life
Mhm.
has pretty much gone to crap for him for a while, but he's still really he's still really good looking. And
Yes.
it turns out, oh sorry, honey, I mean to
No,
cut
no,
you
no, no, no.
it turns out that he didn't have any martial arts experience at all before the Karate Kid.
You couldn't, that doesn't, it seems like he'd been training. Like he seemed like, wow, I didn't know that.
I had no idea. I thought he knew, martial arts, but apparently he didn't. But eventually he earned a black belt in Tang Soo Do.
Ah, interesting. Very
Hmm.
interesting. Yeah, I can understand that he would go on to do something like that, especially after that series that does kind of promote not just the physical benefits of martial arts, but also the spiritual benefits of it as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But we've been treated to so many wonderful scenes of his character, in training and whatever. Whoever
Hmm.
made this also likes the female gaze, or for those of us who are not women but like men, they certainly have catered to our need for that. And thank you so much for doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? And to bring it back to martial arts movies in general, when you see a martial arts film, you expect to see some skin from the waist up. You expect to see that training montage of movement and
Absolutely.
body movement and muscle movement. And you expect that because the pride is not only of learning the martial arts, but being able to express that form and do it extremely gracefully. I mean, nobody likes a chunky martial arts artist. I mean, when I say that, I mean just like there's no flow, there's no harmony, there's no discipline. They're just kind of just doing the movements just to do it out there. Kind of like when they first learn, you're really jerky with putting them together. But eventually when you start to learn it all together, it just harmoniously flows. So I know every martial arts movie I've seen, you get to see some skin in those training montages. And the fights too.
Yes.
Fights too. You get to see that. As a matter of fact, I expect to see that. So I'm glad that they kept that in this series.
And I'm glad that, we are seeing mature men being sexy. There
Absolutely.
are so many mature men out there who are sexy, and give them their due. This is a very unique time, and it's true. I kind of made a boomer comment earlier, just for kicks and giggles, but honestly, I'll take it. I'll take a boomer if I can get a boomer like that, Lorena.
Oh yeah. That's still looking good. It's like, yeah, the years kind of, gravity kind of gets to you a little bit, but for the most part, still looking good, still training, still working out. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. So that's also another part of the guilty pleasure, probably why I like watching I
Yeah,
like watching Cobra Kai
absolutely.
as well. But a little bit more information
Yes.
about William. Apparently, let's see, his father Stan, who is a director, writer, composer, apparently worked on a Chuck Norris film.
Oh,
That's another one
yes.
that pushed martial arts into the mainstream in the eight. Chuck Norris.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He certainly brought the films to a height of popularity that, that's why there was a whole genre of that. And yeah, I've seen Chuck Norris in so many movies that I can't even say, as well as television roles. Was it
Hmm.
Walker, Texas Ranger?
Walker, Texas Ranger.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So I remember him in that. And, that man was amazing, especially when it came to promoting martial arts as well.
Yes. And one of the cool things about Chuck Norris is that, he and Bruce Lee were friends.
Yes. Yes, that is very true. And, that goes such a long way in, the importance of practicing the art and also, having colleagues that promote it as well, willing to teach others, regardless of what your background is. They just want you to also get the benefits of enjoying martial arts.
Hmm. Absolutely. Let's see. Let's see. Well, his mom, of course, worked in the business,
Right.
in
I
the
see.
entertainment business.
So, yeah.
Yeah, producer, PA. And let's see, he's got a brother and sister. They're accomplished singers, musicians, and songwriters.
Wow.
And apparently, he is too. William plays guitar and piano. So
Goodness, so talented. Wow.
I like that.
Yeah, me too.
Very cool. Let's see. He speaks Czech fluently.
Nice.
Czech translation of her surname pronounced ZABKA is little frog. Okay.
Aw,
ZABKA. Okay.
that's sweet.
Yeah, now I'm gonna think little frog.
Sounds like a martial arts kind of style or something like that.
Really? Frog style?
Yeah,
Little
they
frog?
have remember the crane, the
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
styles from
You know
the Seven
what?
Deadly Styles or
Hmm.
whatever.
The Karate Kid forever put into people's brain what the crane was. And
Yeah,
every time you see that pose,
that's right.
like it's about to go on. Oh my gosh, let's see. So apparently he just thought of acting as a hobby. So he didn't really get into it or really want to get into it until he was, like 14 or 15.
Mhm. Oh,
And
right,
that
he was in just one of the guys,
which
where
movie was that?
you remember, the girl pretended to be a boy for some reason.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. I remember now.
And he was in that film, and yeah, it was a very I mean, it was a film, it was meant to be it was a situational comedy, so she had to do it for a particular reason. And her brother was like, why do you keep doing that? Why do you keep dressing like that? And she's like, I have
Hmm.
to dress like this. And it was a very unusual, funny, quirky 80s comedy, teen comedy film. Um,
Hmm.
that I don't know if they could make it today. I don't know whether it would fit into
Yeah, I think people would get their panties in a wad about, about that movie.
my favorite part is at the end, like when she has to tell them that she's a girl and they don't believe her, and she's like, whoosh, and they're like,
Yeah. I may have to pull that movie back out and watch it because
yeah,
I remember that one. That was a
yeah.
funny movie. Oh, let's see. My training in martial arts was kind of a crash course in how to look like a black belt. I know the moves of a black belt, my kicks, my stretches and punches and all of that. So that makes sense. That it's like, okay, we'll teach you enough to make you look like you know what you're doing
Right.
on screen. But I think it's so cool that he liked it so much that he went out and did the work to get a black belt.
Yeah, it had an impression on him. And I think that a lot of people who are around people who practice martial arts or try to get into it end up, kind of connecting with it and and
Hmm.
having an outcome like that. And, I think it's wonderful that a person can do something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see, prior to the Karate Kid, he did commercials, Kool-Aid, Pepsi, milk. I had always been cast as the all-American nice guy. I do remember some of those commercials
I
that
don't
he was in.
I gotta look for them now because I want to see him as a.
I think Pepsi is the one I really remember,
Mhm.
because Pepsi had all those edgy commercials in the 80s. I still think Pepsi is disgusting, but their ads were slick. Their
Mhm.
ads were extremely slick in the 80s. So, oh man, we have to go back and
Yeah,
check out some commercials on YouTube, see which ones he was on.
definitely.
Let's see, back when I was maybe 19, guys would go, I could kick your butt. So I had a few showdowns. To my advantage, I learned martial arts. And what you really learn is not to fight.
Hmm. Now that sounds like Daniel's message
Hmm.
is to avoid fighting and, keep the peace, so to speak.
Yeah, Miyagi Do, kind of like it's like you don't want to go around stomping mud holes in people. It's like when you think about it, it takes a lot of energy, at least I think so, to fight like that. So it's like you don't want to go into that part of yourself unless you absolutely have to. At least that's kind of how I think. It's like you would have to commit yourself to just like, if I'm going to go there, I really have to go there. You don't want me to go there because you're not going to like the outcome. So it's just like, hey, let's escalate, try to de-escalate as much as possible. It's kind of like how some bouncers are, well, most of them anyway, kind of like, let's be nice until it's time to not be nice. That's a Roadhouse quote.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another really
Absolutely.
good 80s movie.
Yes, it is.
I have to
Yes.
watch I have to watch Roadhouse. And I love this quote from him. Sometimes you become a character and sometimes the character becomes you.
Yeah, and that's really a good point. First, I think certainly the Johnny character is 100% Zapka all the way. I think that it has his charm and his, personality wrapped into it a bit.
Hmm.
So maybe even the passion that he had when he was fighting for Elizabeth Shue, you know,
Yeah.
that certainly tells you his maybe the him on adrenaline, but certainly there was more to him than meets the eye. A lot of onion, not a lot of layers in that onion, so to speak.
Yes. A whole lot of layers. Absolutely. And I love this one where it says, all the Karate Kid 1984 fans from the original are parents these days. I think that's a cool thing. And that is really cool. Actually,
Absolutely.
like the parents are just like, yeah, I remember that movie. I remember, yeah, oh, okay, all right. Yeah, what happened to that guy? So I think that's like the built-in fan base, so to speak. The parents are like, hey, I used to watch this and I got some really good lessons out of it. And hey, I'd like to relive this, with my kids. The kids see it, but they also see kids that look like them that are dealing with problems, or we'll say problems or situations of that particular generation, and need like their parents' support. So they also see themselves in the film. Like, for example, the use of social media, and how social media, it's like, well, it can be good, how social media is also used to bully in school as well. And that was a very good topic that I'm glad that they tackled. So that's something that modern kids can picture themselves in that particular situation, like, what would I do?
Yeah, I agree with you, and I want to add on to that as well with the idea of kids actually getting into fights. Yeah, it was a big thing when we were in school. Like kids would get in fights, and I guess whatever the outcome was, maybe they'd be in school together the next day. Like this was, they didn't necessarily mean that you didn't see that kid again. Um, you might have to see that kid again the next week when you go back to school, and they
Hmm.
talk about that as well, because these kids were throwing some serious kicks at one another. And it was circumstantial in a sense because the school trusts that the kids are not going to get into a fight. But the way
Right.
that, high schools back then were arranged, and probably even now, you could like find a corner and, set up,
Hmm.
fight
With
club.
no cameras.
That's right. That's right. You could set up fight club. And we saw that we even saw some situations where the kids got hurt by accident because they were taking risks. And, I think that that
Hmm.
was really important to show as well that, think bad things can happen even, even when you're not throwing a punch, if you're pushing the limits in something you shouldn't be doing, so to speak. Think people can still get hurt even if you don't throw a punch. So I think that they thought a lot of scenarios out because by these some of these confrontations, it's not going to be hearts and flowers. It's not.
No, no, because some of them is just like, what if you're in a situation where you need to defend yourself? And again, like back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, like dating myself or whatever, that just seemed to be, the thing. Hey, I just want to fight you. Why the frick do you want to? Doesn't matter. I want to fight you.
Mhm.
And it's just like, why the heck would you want to do that? But that was a real thing that actually did happen. So when someone threatens your person, it's like, how are you going to handle that? Like the one, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the I don't really want to call him a geek. He's actually he's on the spectrum. I love how his character like developed. He went from being kind of like, I don't want to throw
I know
kicks or
who you're
whatever.
talking about.
Eli.
Yeah, yeah, I love his character. He's becoming such a man, isn't he?
Yeah. He's
Uh,
like, oh my God. He's like, I have a girlfriend now. And Johnny's like, you want to keep taking crap all your life, And he's like, well, I don't want to fight. And he's just like, so you just want to let people just basically beat up on you, pick on you, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop coming for you.
yeah.
You have to stand up, for yourself.
And this is starting to sound like a conversation you and I had about JoJo's bizarre adventure, but it's true. It's 100% true.
It's 100% true. You have people who just want to be bullies and be punks, and they'll try to look for the softest target that they can find. And once that target fights back, then I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I can't do that anymore. I mean, I think I've told this story before, but yeah, I'll tell it anyway. So it's like middle school, minding my own business or whatever. This girl just would not freaking leave me alone. I'm trying to like, I'm not trying to get in a fight with you. Why are you, picking on me? I don't know you. I don't care to know you. Why don't you mind your own business? And did everything like no one did anything. My mom was like, this person keeps threatening my kid. Why did you do anything? Oh, well, she hasn't touched them, so they haven't really done anything. And one day she just went too far. And I think I blanked out for a bit. But all I know is I basically kicked her ass in the hallway. And we're in the principal's office. And we're just like, well, we're going to have to call your parents. I said, go ahead. She's been suspended, I don't know how many times. I never have been. Go ahead. I bet you. Go call my mother. How many times has she called your office and you didn't do anything? They're like,
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, I can take this hit of a suspension. I think you're going to get expelled, right? So I can take that particular hit. After that, I didn't have any problem out of this chick. Neither one of us got suspended. I said, yeah, be grateful your ass didn't get expelled. That's because of me. After that, any problem whatsoever. I mean, nasty looks, but not that I freaking cared. But word got around that's no longer, a soft target
Right.
at all. So one of the things that I do love about this show, and especially with William's character, Johnny, basically saying, no, you don't want to go around out there starting fights, even though he did, as a kid. But it's just, you want to protect others and you want to protect yourself. And that's like toxic masculinity put in
Absolutely.
a positive way. Like he didn't want his students running out there just
No.
purposely starting crap, because when they did, yeah, he made them pay for it.
Yeah, the whole freaking, what did they close down an entire arcade that time or something? It was
Yeah,
nuts.
it was one of the craziest fights of like, oh man, they're gonna pay for this, but daggone it.
I mean, and I think that first of all, thank you for sharing the story about what happened to you. It's important for people to hear stuff like this because it does happen. We see it actually in Cobra Kai, more or less, in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is truly something that it is a thorny topic and not everybody wants to approach it. We've seen it a little bit in Stranger Things, a little bit.
Yeah, we did. That was heartbreaking.
And, I think that, to be honest with you, I think that these kids at these schools now, the idea, or at least the intention, is if they're in separate dojos, they can fight and it's controlled. This is this notion or a sense of, okay, it's a controlled environment, but also they have something to strive for. They want to win that year, or,
Mm-hmm.
and of course we can see that can be manipulated, but even so, it's distracting them from maybe necessarily getting into more confrontations and they're in the same school. So that also, complicates it. Some of them like the same kids, a very similar situation that we're seeing repeat itself.
Mm-hmm.
This scene that you have up here, Lorena, is very interesting because you and I have spoken about how we're seeing these different roles that men are playing, especially, let's say the older men towards the younger boys. He's practically a young man, if you will, or a boy.
Mm-hmm.
He's still a teenager or a minor, so to speak. But what's interesting is that he's practically like a father to this boy. And yet at the same time, the dichotomy is that he is at odds with his own son. And so,
Yes.
this, is his name Miguel? It's Miguel, right?
Yes, this is Miguel. Mm-hmm.
So Miguel is this beautiful boy who happens to be the son of this woman that he's kind of fallen for, this incredibly attractive woman who's
Yes.
in the apartment next door. And, so there's that. And Miguel knows his mother's attractive and knows that men are going to want to go out with her. So he doesn't necessarily like, Johnny being friendly
Mm-hmm.
because he knows what's going to happen. Right. So there's that resentment there. But of course, Johnny is looking at Miguel and saying, this is a really nice young man. I wish I had this relationship with my own son.
Yes. Yeah. And even that starts to, it's like you can tell that he really regrets not being there for his son the way that he wanted to be. So he kind of like, even there's times where he actually oversteps in a way, because it's like he's trying to overcompensate for what happened, with his son. Then of course, we see his son, Robbie, who is just like, oh, so you got another son, so you don't care about me anymore. So that's an actual real thing where he's just like, okay, yeah, I was younger and I screwed up, and I'm paying for it, but trying to bridge that that relationship. And you see that going on. So you see that regret that Johnny has, that like, I wasn't man enough to stay and raise my son the way that I should have. So while it's, to him, it's kind of like, this seems to be the best thing that I can do, right now, to try to be a father figure to Miguel, who doesn't have one, in his life. And not only that, but also protective towards himself and his mother. Although Miguel's kind of like, I'm the man of the house. Why the heck do I freaking do I need you? And to kind of go into another rabbit hole, I remember the episode where his mother found out that he was taking karate, and she was freaking out and like, I don't think he should do this. And the grandma in Spanish basically says, he needs to do this. This is good for him. So what if he gets beat up? Yeah.
Yes, it was
And I'm like, grandma, yes, thank you.
oh, it was so good. And it was just like a triumph for masculinity because he needed to express this. He has talent, first of all, in the martial arts. But I think that she was afraid of him getting hurt, but he's not a little boy anymore.
No,
And
and
so
that's go ahead, my dear.
yeah, and that's what that's what she's trying to, keep him as a child, and she can protect him, but he's going out in the world on his own now, and I don't think she can really protect him that way anymore.
No, especially considering that, that he's a young man, and that's always a struggle with not even just like single mothers, but mothers in general, mothers of sons,
Oh yeah.
because when they tend to, not let them learn how to be men and fail on their own, they turn into mama's boys. And that's not there. Okay, so there's a difference between a man taking care of his mother because, she can't live on her own. That is different.
Right.
As opposed to you stay at your mama's house because you don't want to go out in the world. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to, your mama's boys and super overprotective
Right.
mothers. So for her, just because this is a situation where she's in and she just has her son, her instinct, of course, as a mother is just like, I want to protect my son, protect my kids, of course. But, I want to protect my son, but he's not a woman, but I just don't know what to do. I don't want him going out and getting hurt, from all of this. So thankfully, her mother, who has experience in the world and has probably raised several kids on her own besides Miguel's mother, is just like, he needs this. He needs a healthy outlet for him to learn how to be a man. And I do believe that that's exactly the words that she said. She emphasized that he needs to do this. Yeah, so he gets beat up a couple times. It happens.
Yeah.
She's like, it happens, but it's like you have to allow him to learn how to go from being, a boy to a young man. And that's one of the reasons why cooperative sports was such a positive thing, because you could have, young men be competitive, like you were saying, in a controlled environment with rules, and they get to compete that way. But it's like now, sports, sports, we used to joke like hockey, how many people are missing teeth? How many, you go to a hockey game to see fights, they're
Yeah.
not supposed to, but you go to the hockey games to see the fights. You go to these competitive sports events because you want to see these competitive exhibitions. And you have lately, or not lately, I probably say within the next past 10 years or so, people just like poo-pooing men's competitive sports, especially professional sports, talking about, this is just toxic masculinity and this is, not what young men should be doing and all of that. And it's like, why? What are you threatened by when
Mhm.
it comes to that? You want to raise a generation of men who are scared to compete, a generation of men who are scared to take risks, and a generation of men who have a lack of pride and be able to protect themselves and the ones that they care about.
Yeah, I agree. And also just essentially they're very ignorant in dealing with, situations, physical situations in a lot of these cases. Not being able to defend yourself. that's something that, I think is fine for a young man to learn how to do. And he's going to take some punches. He's going to.
Absolutely. There's some fights that you're not going to win, but are you going to fight on your knees, or it's going to be, well, they had to finally knock me out, It's it's funny because I'm not going to say funny haha or anything like that, but even just like with my nephews, and how much it's like you put girls, they'll cooperatively play with dolls and other things, and they'll share and be like, oh, let's do this and cooperative things together. Boys are like, what suicide mission are we on today? And they will do everything. Who
Yeah.
can jump the fastest, the
Yes.
furthest? Who can take a tackle? Who can't? I accidentally punched you. Okay, so what? I'm gonna punch you back.
Yeah.
Okay,
How many
fine.
punches can you take?
Yeah, how many can you take? I bet you $5 you can't jump off of that and make
Yeah.
that over there, and you want to breaking a leg. It's like, well, yeah, but you did look good, kind of doing that.
In the air. Yeah, you look good soaring through the air.
I know. I said, I wish I would have taken that picture. Like the boys who would say, okay, I'm gonna jump my bike over this jump here to see if I can. Are any girls looking? Okay, and they do it, and it's just that's just how boys are different from girls. They're very competitive, and of course you have this arena where it's okay for them to be to be competitive.
And we also, and I'm sure you feel this way, and I think a lot of people who watch Cobra Kai, I wouldn't be surprised, Lorena, if there were, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, I wouldn't be surprised if there were more men than women who watch this show. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
that men enjoy seeing other men having these physical fights and altercations and training and the spirituality of all this. The show hits a lot of different factors, in regards to self-control, knowing when to act, being, loyalty in some cases, figuring out what your goals are. This really is a show that has so many elements that are important to just even surviving, and for the younger cast members becoming, men and women, because the women in this particular show are also martial artists.
Yes.
So they are also training there, which is incredibly important. But there's no kind of overshadowing of one person versus another. If anything, the biggest thing between the men and the women is the love triangles.
Oh, that love triangle. I freaking loved it. I absolutely loved it. I thoroughly enjoyed watching that.
This young girl doesn't know who to choose from. Why not have them both? I mean,
both. How come you don't look at me like that? You used to look at me like that. Look at me. Oh my gosh. And just, let's go in here and just make them jealous. Yeah, we're going to sell it too. So we're going to do this freaking tango and just make everybody jealous. What are you looking at? What are you looking at? I mean, it was great, because how many altercations did you see happen at prom? Okay.
Yes. Did you see that dress? Oh my God. I can't even get into it, but yes, you're right. There was a lot. It came to a point where the nuns couldn't even control everything anymore. So you are right, Lorena. A lot goes down in these events that we see. And it's the guy with the pointy mohawk that you were talking about, right, Lorena? Is that the kid who changed
no, it's oh gosh, I forget. I keep
it's the other
that's
kid.
Hawk. Hawk and Eli, they started together. Together because when Johnny first saw them, like, Hawk is like, yeah, I want to get down with it. I want to do this. And Eli's like, I don't know why I'm here. Why did you drag me here?
Eli is the one who he breaks his arm or something.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Because Eli was on the spectrum. He didn't want to like hit anybody, or he didn't want to, he was just like, I shouldn't have to like do that. And Johnny's like, tired of getting beat up, till eventually got to a point. Because remember when they had that whole fight in the school?
Yes.
that's when he like
that
sprung
was
into action.
Reina.
And that's when I believe when he helped out old girl, which was the most popular chick in school. And then after that, because he defended her, they wound up together.
Yes. And that fight, Lorena, that was like one of those, that thing went down in the history books for me, because I was like, oh my gosh, these kids are going to be in so much trouble after this.
So much trouble. It was just like freaking like the worst case scenario
Yeah.
that you could have happen. And it's not just kids just fighting. You have kids trained in martial
Yes.
arts
Yeah.
fighting and not using the rules of the dojo.
That's right. And so it was what I like to call no holds barred high
Yes.
school brawl. That was just, and of course, accidents happened. People got hurt. Like, it was the disaster we thought it was. However, it was a learning lesson for them. And I think even
Mhm.
some part where, Danny's daughter finds herself in a sticky situation sometimes, because as you said, she kind of used the power of, the internet to kind of cause trouble, put, light fires and things of that nature. But
Mhm.
now she finds herself in a situation where even with her advantages, it's not enough to, control other people. And I thought that was a really important thing to demonstrate. But we also saw the reverse of the coin when I think it might have been the last season or 2 seasons ago, where they think they're going to win, and then the ballot, I guess that they had to vote or something, and then it's fixed. And sometimes
Mhm.
things do happen outside of your control, and that's actually what Johnny is running away from. He's running away from the you can't win no matter what you do kind of scenario of,
Mhm.
the real world scenario, because he witnessed it so young. So I think it's very interesting to see that it still kind of haunts them a little bit, even
Mhm.
when they're trying to do the right thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's kind of like try to do the right thing and we get screwed. So why should I even try? And I love this picture because
Yes.
when Johnny's just like, you know what? I'm just done. I'm just done. I'm just gonna quit. And Miguel's just like, you told me not to quit, and now you're gonna quit. It's funny because it keeps switching back and forth. But him basically saying, why are you gonna quit? And I think it's because Johnny didn't have someone to tell him, you're better than this. Don't freaking quit. It's like don't quit. So I love how that flips between you had that situation and then Miguel, can't walk and he's in rehab and Johnny's doing stuff like, lighting a fire in his lap and all this stuff like, come on, you gotta get up, right?
Absolutely. And you can see the chemistry, Miguel. Well, first of all, Zapka has chemistry with everybody.
That's true. He does. He does. That's some talent right there.
Yes, and the relationship that he has with Miguel, it is like a father and son. So,
Hmm.
Miguel has kind of in the series grown to expect that relationship from him. And I don't think Miguel is in a position of maturity enough where he could say, well, this guy isn't my real dad and I can just walk away from this. He's not. Like, it's very painful to him, if the scenario, if Johnny were to ever say, well, I can't ever be like a dad to you, if he were to say that or to reject him, I don't think Miguel is mature enough to really handle that. And it would be like getting maybe the rejection, or I think his father is deceased, right?
His father is alive at
Okay.
the end of
I couldn't
season
remember.
4. Um, he basically he leaves and he goes to Mexico. He leaves his mother a letter. It basically says, I just feel like I
Oh,
just feel like I have to find my dad.
yes, that's right. I forgot that. You're right. And
Mhm.
how could I forget that? Um, And I think that if even going forward, let's say if Miguel suddenly decides that he's going to reunite with his father and things are going to be fine, if he gets rejected by Johnny, it's going to feel like a rejection from his father. So
Absolutely.
it's not a friendship. It's not sort of like they're mates. this is definitely father-son relationship. And it's interesting too to see these father-son relationships. You know, Johnny has no choice. He's kind of taken this boy under his wing, and
Mhm.
you know, he's assumed the father role. And it's good to see situations like this where men are doing this to children. It's not his kid. You know, he's doing this because he loves this kid, and this is the situation that, you know, he is in. It's not, he didn't go seeking it or anything like that. It was just something that happened by design, by just naturally happened. And I do like that. I like that it was something that, you know, he saw him and they naturally gravitated towards one another. And,
Mhm.
you know, Miguel needs, you know, a father figure. And I think Johnny probably wants to be a dad to him. So I think it's really wonderful to show that kind of a relationship too, in the story. And then, of course, we're seeing the opposite as well, sometimes with Danny and Johnny's son for a little while. Um,
Mhm.
so it is, you have a bunch of men who are adults who are really being father figures to these boys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which is, and it's something that used to be very prevalent in entertainment, especially when it comes to depictions of men. Like it was pretty much assumed, you know, you got some young guys who don't know what the heck they're doing. Hey, you got to have some older men to go and rein them in. The
Yeah.
older men wind up learning some lessons that they didn't quite learn the first time. You have the younger ones who, grow up and learn, basically what it is to be a young man in society. So I I really, that's one of the things that I love about this show is that they're unapologetic about men and all of their traits. And I think that's another reason why people just gravitate, to this show. There's no apology.
No.
There's zero apology, for it. And Johnny, I'm trying to remember. I think in the last season, because they had to get a girl, right, to join them, and he was just like, "Okay, I have to make sure I have this like speech right." He's like using all the right words and like patriarchy and all this other stuff
Yes,
to
that's right.
finally get the girl to join the dojo. And I think she tried to say what her pronouns are, and he was like, "I don't give a crap about your pronouns." Yes, sensei. No, sensei. But
Hmm.
I thought that was cool because he's like, okay, I figured out how to get in there to say the right words. Because he'd ask Miguel, yeah, am I supposed to say this? I'm supposed to say, really? I gotta say this? I was like, okay. Okay.
And then there even came to a point where Miguel does I wouldn't say it's not a Tinder page, or was it? It wasn't Tinder. It was
No, it was Facebook because
yes.
he was gave Elizabeth's shoe because I think in the end of season 3, like he had sent a friend request and
Yes.
like everything
That
went to
was like,
crap. And then you see that she accepted his friend request. I'm like, it's just,
yeah.
they better bring Elizabeth's shoe back. And sure enough, they brought back Elizabeth's shoe. But yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's so good. It's so good. I mean, seeing things like that where um the funny thing about Johnny is that he doesn't necessarily care whether he gets all the things right or not. He just wants to do what he has to do to get the job done, and he's going to
Mhm.
go on. It's not necessarily changing him in any way. He's still going to be the same man listening to the same heavy metal tracks from the 80s or glam bands from
Mhm.
the 80s, and he's totally
Yeah,
fine with that. Oh, I love this girl.
I
I
loved her.
love this girl
I
so
freaking
much.
at first she was kind of like, well, I don't, and then she was just like, I'm tired of freaking getting bullied, and she was just
Yes.
tearing through this. I loved that about her. She
And yeah,
was,
and it's just genius, Lorena, isn't it? This feels as good as the films. And I remember watching, they're trying to get that feeling again. How do you get that feeling in a show where you watch it and you have a feel good, time with it? Yes, it's not all perfect, but there are moments like this, which is just such a triumph. Um, for a program where you're rooting for this person now, you're behind this person. And, it's so hard to get the public or any of the viewers to get behind a character. And yet we're behind almost all of the characters in this series.
Almost all of them, except Crease. Now you got some Crease fans out there. You got some Crease fans, some Terry Silver fans. But it's just funny. It's just like I think like after what's the end of the first episode or no, beginning of the third, when Crease shows up, you just automatically feel like this freaking guy is back. And it's just like, is Johnny gonna like stick to his guns and they're like, no, you don't need to, you don't need to be there. But it's even to the point where you hate the same freaking character. Even though they show back up, it's like, yeah, they're here. Oh yeah, I freaking hated that guy. They've just been able to capture that so well, and those feelings so well. And just like I'll actually go back to this article here, kind of like what Hayden Schlossberg was saying. He has like these rules here about how to man, I just boomered that.
No, it's how to make a successful reboot.
Reboot. But the main things that he said, or the major thing that he said, was that you have to respect the original lore. You can do your own thing, but do it so it ties back to the lore. Now they did switch things a little, they did switch things with what Johnny's how Johnny is now, but the flashbacks, you get the backstory to why he is the way that he is. So they go back to the original subject matter to explain or fill in some blanks, so to speak, about what happened. Kreese shows up. He's not the good guy. He's not, oh, hey, I had a change of heart or whatever. Even Terry Silver, when he shows up and he's kind of like, oh, yes, I'm this Zen whatever. And then he again turns into the crazy ass person that we remember. Yeah, we remember that. So much of it is just respecting the original stuff. And that's what you want to do. You don't want to insult the original fans of the show. You don't want to do that. It's like you not only want to satisfy the original fans, but you also want to bring in new fans. I don't know how many kids I've seen walking around with Cobra Kai t-shirts.
Yeah, my very good friend Dieter, who's a member of the PGS and is co-host on Let's Get Physical Media, bought me a Cobra Kai shirt. I couldn't find it. I wanted to wear it for this review, and sorry, Dietz, I couldn't find it. But yeah, I have a Cobra Kai shirt that he bought me, which is really nice of him. Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm one of those persons who has one. But you're right. There are a lot of kids who have now become fans of this show big time. And it's a legacy. They get to go back and watch that stuff, from the beginning. Gosh, that must be an amazing feeling to know that, the franchise has that legacy to it. And it makes sense because they stuck with the original lore of the story.
Exactly. It's like, this is how you flippin' do it. So to kind of end on this, because of course season 5 is coming out, and this interview with William, he says Cobra Kai's creators have an end game to the story, suggests a new film trilogy.
Yay!
I was like, oh yeah. I'm so down with this, especially if the same people who are writing this TV series or web series, streaming series, also do the films, because they're like, okay, we can wrap up this story, then we can do prequels, we can do sequels with the young kids. There's just so much stuff that that they can go and do it. And I'm excited about it because, first of all, I didn't think Cobra Kai was going to go 5 seasons.
I didn't either, Lorena. First of all, I'm pleasantly surprised, but it is a miracle that anything gets made, let alone this many seasons and this amount of success, it is a miracle.
Absolutely. A total miracle. And it seems to be more and more people just get sucked into this series. I mean, I was fortunate enough for season 4 to actually get an invite to view the first episode before it aired, and I'm just like, I can't tell y'all what happens, but it was so good. It was like what you expect a season opener to be, because this show has such tight show running. When you see the season premiere, you want to find out what happened to the cliffhanger from the end of that season, and it should start off with a bang. And it's been like that every single season. I'm pretty sure season 5 is going to be the same way. I'm looking at this here, and you've got Johnny. You've got Daniel's wife. You've got Chosen. I'm so excited that they brought Chosen
Yes,
back.
absolutely. Oh my gosh.
And Danny.
Yeah, this is just really it's like a dream come true. And I think that if they can pull this trilogy off, it's just been such a wonderful ride. With more to come. I'm just so happy and pleased with all this. Yeah, thank you, Cobra Kai people. Thank you all.
Yes. And thank you, Hayden Schlossberg, because I hadn't had a series hit me like, oh my God, I have to freaking watch so much of it. I mean, this series was so big that it was even outshadowing other stuff like Star Wars. People were like, "No, you got to go watch Cobra Kai." What, really? And just so many people were talking about it, and it just got to be
Mhm.
so huge. And the hype is not dying down. This is on Netflix. This is probably going to get Stranger Things.
Wow.
I think it's going to get Stranger Things numbers. Or very, if they don't hit it, they'll come very, very close, I believe,
So
to
you think they'll possibly
doing it.
break another record or come close to the record?
I think they are. I
Wow.
really do think that they are.
That is fantastic. And I wouldn't be surprised if it did. Yeah, so it is very interesting. The only other thing that I would say that's very interesting that we didn't talk about, although we did kind of allude to it, was that one of the primary reasons why this whole thing works is because Danny and Johnny decide to open their own dojos.
Yes.
And so, I think that it was something that perhaps they had put aside for a while.
hmm
And at some point, whatever training they had now has come back to them. They can see the benefits of it. And, there are always going to be other dojos available and other, techniques and styles and things to focus on. But
hmm
they went back to sort of like the original teachings they had. And it did have an impact on them in the long run. So I think that was also a win for martial arts as well.
Totally. And even growth, because to go back to what you were saying, what kicked this off was Cobra Kai was back. Cobra Kai dojo open. Daniel finds out Cobra Kai is back in business. It's just like, you've got to be kidding me. I don't have you indoctrinating these kids. Johnny's like, well, what are you talking about? I'm not, who I was. And Daniel's just like, no, can't have this. Happen. You want to fight? You want to fight here right now? You want to fight? Johnny's like, are you freaking serious? And yeah, so Daniel decides to open his own dojo, Miyagi-Do, and they're like fighting back and forth, whatever. Johnny loses, Cobra Kai.
Right.
They, started up with Eagle Fang. Eagles don't have fangs. Like, shut up. Eagle Fang, and then they wind up combining forces. So you got Eagle Fang and Miyagi-Do, and they're trying to with the two. So finally the kids start to figure out the style that I use is just dependent on the situation. And just because I use one over the other isn't any disrespect to either of you. So that was like growth for Johnny and for, for Daniel to have something that I did not see, that I didn't see coming. So now you have this situation where Cobra Kai is now being run by Kreese and Terrence Silver.
Yes.
So it's like, what's gonna happen now? And I just can't wait. I can't wait to see more of William
Yes.
Zabka. I'm probably saying it wrong yet again. I can't wait to see more of him in action. He's
God,
he's an amazing actor. I almost wish that he would have done more things, but looks like he just did what he wanted to. And this came up at the right moment for him. So I'm excited to see what he does in season 5, but also keeping a keen eye on what else that he gets involved in, because it's good to see him. Also good to see Rep, because I think both of them were out of commission for years. I don't think I'd seen anything really Ralph Macchio was in.
He wasn't in much. This is definitely a show that shows the potential of a mature man, which
Absolutely.
is, it's not like the Predator film we watched, but it feels like it has that ensemble element to it
Yes.
of, mature men who, after, let's say, have a certain conditioning to them, are here, especially maybe not Johnny and Danny, but the other characters who look like they might have continued their training, let's say, over the past 20 years,
Hmm.
and are conditioned in such a way that you can tell that somebody's been practicing for 20 years.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing that a little bit more, and it is nice to see that conditioning in these men, and their experience. It's become martial arts and a bit of a chess game as well.
Hmm.
Lorena, this is just absolutely fantastic.
I'm excited. I'm trying to figure out. I'm not going to get to see all the darn episodes. My plan is to at least see the first two for my lunch table show
What
in time
time
for
do
that.
they come out, Lorena?
I believe they drop, what is it, 3 a.m. Pacific?
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
wait, 12, no, sorry, probably 12 a.m. Pacific, which would be 3 a.m. Eastern time. That's usually when stuff drops here when it's on streaming.
Okay.
So
Okay.
some people stay up. I can't do that. Sorry. I'll just wake up in the morning, eat breakfast, and watch it.
Mhm. Oh, it's going to be so good. I'm so happy they did
Oh,
this. And Zabka is amazing.
he is absolutely amazing. I'm so glad he did this series, and I'm looking forward to more amazing acting from him. When you think quote unquote toxic male, he is definitely in there. So if you watch this whole series, that's exactly what he's like. He even has to give lessons to Daniel. You're gonna do that. What are you drinking? What are you drinking? That like what pansy beer? What the frick is that? He's like, I brought like this, IPA. He's like, frick is that? But yeah, great stuff. Love this show. So many people love it. It's such a great depiction of masculinity at several stages, of life. So you have the ones that get it right and the ones that don't get it right, because you kind of need both of those. But overall, the message in Cobra Kai is not one that is condescending towards men. If anything, it's learning to do the right thing as a man. And if you don't, as a man, guess what? These are consequences you wind up reaping.
Mhm.
God, I can't wait for it.
Me too, me
Cannot
too.
wait, cannot wait, cannot wait.
It's so good.
Folks, thank you so very much for hanging out with us on this episode of the Toxic Male Appreciation Show. Sure do appreciate you watching. So please do subscribe to her of Positive Fandom because we have got to get her monetized. So subscribe to
Yes,
her,
please.
watch her stuff, please. She's got amazing, amazing
you.
shows. You got to check that out.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. You're welcome. And of course, folks, we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Prismatic says, of course I drop in when you guys are ending me. Well, good to see you, Prismatics.
Bye.
No worries. We'll have the repeat on Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern. See ya. Bye.
Bye.